We're going to begin this hour with a revealing firsthand account of what happened inside the White House while former President Donald Trump was in office. All of it according to former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. He's got a new book. It's called A Sacred Oath, Memoirs of a Secretary of Defense During Extraordinary Times. And it's a detailed account of the nearly 18 months he served under President Trump from June 2019 to November of 2020. The former secretary writes about the challenges of working for Trump, including allegations that the president suggested shooting at protesters in the nation's capital. Secretary Esper joins us for his first live television interview about this book. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here.
Thanks. Great to be here.
I'm glad you wrote the book. I'm glad you served in your role. But I have to start with kind of a process question, which is, why did you accept this job in the first place, having just seen how President Trump treated your predecessor, General Mattis?
You know, I served my country since the age of 18. When I went to West Point, 10 years in the Army, active duty, combat, Gulf War, another 11 years in the Guard and Reserve. It was another chance for me to once again serve my country, and in a way that I thought could be meaningful and help deliver on our nation's security.
Clearly it was meaningful. As you write in the book, you had to stop a lot of bad things from happening. I'd love to know if there was a particular moment, a high point or really a low point, where you felt like the world order as we know it, or the country as we know it, was in danger of spinning out of control.
Well, as I talk about in my book, it's June 1st, right? We go from June 1st to June 2nd, protests around the country, hundreds of cities, unrest. The president is pushing to call in active duty troops. It is not relenting. And as we roll into June 3rd, I decide the night of June 2nd that I got to get out there and say something. The republic feels wobbly. Somebody needs to put, their hand on the wheel, foot on the brake, and kind of calm things down. And I thought that me coming out publicly and saying, look, I do not support invocation of the Insurrection Act. It doesn't make sense at this point in time. That might help, and I believe it did, frankly.
Do you think that President Trump fully understood the consequences of his actions when he was in office?
With regard to this, no. He was just so upset and angry about the protests in the street that he wanted to suppress it. He wanted to get it under control.
You also wrote that President Trump asked the military if he could shoot missiles into Mexico. And you basically explained to him that that's illegal. It's an act of war.
Right.
And he said, well, we'll shoot those missiles at cartels and drug houses. When you told him that, what was his response?
Well, look, he wanted to shoot at drug labs. And as I say, I get it, right? We all are troubled by drugs in America. He was trying to find a way to go after this, but there are right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. And when I said, no, you can't, it would be an act of war, illegal, he said, well, look, nobody will know. They just won't find out.
Wow.
In your book that you wrote here, you said that our nation's institutions and our democracy are only as strong as the people who are serving in those roles. It's likely that former President Trump will run again in 2024. What are the consequences of him running and possibly being nominated as the next president of the United States?
Well, I'm glad you read that and highlighted that. And you're right. I think our institutions are only as strong as the people in them. I was blessed to serve with wonderful people at the Pentagon who really put country first. And so that's one of the things you have to look at when you elect a president. Who will they bring in around them? Who will be in their cabinet? And I think this is, in some ways, a cautionary tale about what the future may hold if President Trump runs in 2024.
What is at stake? I mean, here we are talking about Ukraine. We're still always, keeping a close eye on China, Iran. But what is at stake if President Trump were to run again?
Well, look, my view is whoever runs has to put country first over self. You have to have integrity, principles. You have to be willing to reach across the aisle and advance the country's greater good. And President Trump doesn't meet those marks for me. So we have to be very cautious about who we elect to be president.
Is he competent enough to hold office again?
Well, he's held office, but I would say for all the Republicans like myself who were attracted to the policies he advanced, less regulation, lower taxes, a stronger military, and so on, there's a whole other crew of Republicans out there who advance those same principles without the turmoil, without the bitterness and divisiveness and the coarseness that Donald Trump brings.
Like who?
Well, I'm not going to start naming names today. We'll see. The 2024 will start after the midterms. Right. Let's see who merges. Let's see who will find some distance between them and Donald Trump.
Yeah. What does it say about the state of politics in this country that after your experience with President Trump, in the 2020 election, you could not bring yourself to vote for President Biden?
Well, it's look, I worked with President Biden, if you will, when I was served on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I know who he is, what he was. I think we should have better choices out there than what we have today. Out of a nation of 330 million people, we've got to have a better set of candidates to really help lead our country. And they have to put country first. They have to aspire to greater things.
Do you have any interest?
I couldn't win an election. I'm I'm too much in the middle, I guess.
I think it's
even though I
significant.
consider myself a Reagan Republican.
In the book, you talk about how President Trump is unprincipled. Hearing you say that you think he's also unfit, I think is a new line that you've crossed here. I'm curious. You know you're going to get involved now with the publication of this book with a kind of tit-for-tat back and forth with the former president. So, for example, he no commented on the shooting missiles into Mexico, but he says it's a lie that he suggested shooting protesters in Washington in that fateful summer. What's your response to that?
People will choose to believe who they want to believe. I will tell you that I sent my draft out to over 24 four-star officers, senior civilians, even a few cabinet members, to review nearly all or parts of the book and to get it helped me get it as accurate, complete, and fair as possible.
So one of the four no's that you and Mark Milley had when you were trying to hold order there in the administration was you didn't want to politicize the Department of Defense. I remember speaking to General Mattis about his book when it came out. He was also not wanting to do that. Your book seems to go further. Now, in this interview, you're going further. Are you worried with the book and with your statements that you risk politicizing the very department you wanted to protect?
Well, look, I'm out of office now. I was a political appointee, so there is some expectation that you have one foot in the political camp and one foot outside the political camp. But I'll tell you what, the Department of Defense has a strong ethos. It's a resilient organization. We are blessed to have the service members, officer, NCO, enlisted members serving that we do. I think the institution will endure. For 240 some years, it's been defending America. It will endure.
Quickly, what is your thoughts on the Biden administration's approach on the war in Ukraine?
Well, as I said, I think it was mixed at first. I thought they were moving too slowly and not enough. I said from day one we should implement full sanctions and give the Ukrainians everything they need to do the job. But I think it's picked up. I think the president has done a good job in terms of bringing along the allies. I think very good job in terms of the strategic release of information to reveal what Putin was trying to do surreptitiously. So I think we're in a much better spot today than where we were initially.
All right, Secretary Esper, as you put in the very front of the book, the oath of the Secretary of Defense is to the Constitution. Not
Most important thing.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
The book, A Sacred Oath, goes on sale tomorrow.